I was a separated wife, the Prince of Wales. I was a problem. Full stop. Never happened before. What do we do? I don't need to do that. I'm not down to do this. This is your event. But in an unplanned visit, a sealed room, and a hidden chest buried in silence. What Princess Anne and Prince George reportedly uncovered in Queen Camilla's bedroom has palace insiders on edge. Rumors suggest this changes everything we thought we knew. Watch till the end and hit subscribe for more royal bombshells. 6 years ago, during the Queen's 90th birthday celebrations, the royal family was still functioning with 15 working members. These were individuals regularly representing the monarch at official events across the country and beyond. But things were already beginning to shift. Charles, then Prince of Wales, quietly expressed his vision for a smaller, more streamlined monarchy. In his view, only 8 senior royals were needed to maintain both tradition and efficiency. His reasoning was practical: fewer public duties and less strain on royal finances. And now as king, that idea is beginning to take form. People will get fed up, and all these young feel nothing is ever happening. So of course they are going to get frustrated. Naturally, Camilla, now queen consort, became one of those 8. Her position was sealed, but not everyone shared Charles's enthusiasm for this approach. Princess Anne, a firm believer in the traditional structure, remained skeptical. She argued that every member had a role to play. That underlying tension, though unspoken, would soon become much more visible and far more personal. It was early May 2025 when an ordinary afternoon turned into something unforgettable. Princess Anne had decided to stop by Clarence House. Her brother, King Charles, had recently scaled back public duties, often citing exhaustion. That alone had stirred quiet concern within the family. But what raised more questions was Camilla's sudden shift in behavior. Camilla had started canceling engagements, reportedly choosing solitude over state dinners. Her absence was subtle but noticeable that day. Princess Anne wasn't alone. Young Prince George, spending the weekend under her care, tagged along. Their bond had grown stronger. Anne respected George's curiosity. 75 now, and I can't remember anybody except and found his questions refreshing. George, in turn, admired Anne's honesty and calm nature. When they arrived, Clarence House felt unusually still. Camilla was nowhere to be found. A chambermaid explained somewhat hesitantly that the Queen had left early that morning for Ray Mill House, her private estate, without informing her full staff. Anne didn't announce her visit, but she also didn't expect secrecy. The stillness inside the residence wasn't peaceful. It felt like something had been left behind intentionally. She and George exchanged a silent look. Neither of them had any idea that they were about to step into one of the most significant royal revelations in recent memory. As they quietly walked through Camilla's quarters, something felt off. The rooms lacked the signs of daily life. No fresh flowers, no open windows, not even a stray teacup. The decision has been a surprise as well as not a surprise. Drapes were tightly drawn, letting in barely any light. It felt more like a museum than someone's living space. Anne's instincts kicked in. She wasn't someone who jumped to conclusions, but she knew when something didn't add up. Without hesitation, she asked the palace steward for the master key. As the king's sister and one of the longest-serving royals, her authority wasn't questioned. When the door opened, the air inside the locked room was dense. Dust lingered. The silence was thick. George scanned the space and noticed something tucked behind a faded dressing screen, an old chest. Its wood was dark and worn. On top, a brass engraving caught his attention. D, he read aloud. Anne paused, her expression tightened. "Step back," she said softly. George obeyed. Anne slipped on a pair of gloves from the vanity and reached for the lock. With a gentle creak, the chest opened and the air in the room seemed to freeze. Inside lay items so personal, so intimate, they could only belong to one person, Princess Diana. I've had hands-on experiences before, but this working trip has been slightly different. Neatly packed inside were Diana's letters, journals, photographs, and mementos, each telling a different story. One envelope, carefully preserved, caught Anne's eye. It was addressed in Diana's handwriting, "To my sons, in case anything ever happens to me." Anne's hands trembled slightly as she passed it to George. He held it carefully, his young face a mixture of wonder and confusion. The moment felt almost too sacred to speak. There were other notes, one written in red ink, addressed to Queen Elizabeth, expressing unease about things she couldn't quite explain. Diana spoke of being watched, of not feeling safe, and of wanting her sons to grow up in a world where they knew the truth. There were no royal archive seals, no sign these items were meant to be studied, protected, or shared. They were hidden, kept away in a private corner of a royal residence. Why would Camilla have them? Anne didn't jump to conclusions, but the questions began forming rapidly. Was this a collection Camilla came across after Diana's belongings were removed from Kensington Palace? Was it given to her, or worse, did she choose to keep it quiet all these years? The more Anne looked through the items, the more disturbing it felt. These weren't just memories. They were confessions, reflections, and echoes of a voice long silent. And now, without warning, that voice had returned right inside Queen Camilla's bedroom. Amid the letters was one from Frances Shan Kidd, Diana's mother. It painted a portrait of pain and regret that many never saw. Born into aristocracy, Frances grew up under constant pressure. Her parents were close to the royal family. From an early age, Frances knew how to smile through difficulty, how to stay quiet when things felt wrong. She married into the Spencer family young, becoming Viscountess Althorpe. On the surface, it was a perfect match. And I think particularly at that time, I was a bit pensive, but behind closed doors, she felt trapped. When she left her marriage for another man in the 1960, the backlash was swift and severe. The most heartbreaking part, she lost custody of all her children, Diana included. The courtroom betrayal from her own mother, who testified against her, turned the battle into something far more personal. Frances's note tucked away in Camilla's chest read more like an emotional journal. It spoke of guilt, of missing Diana's milestones, of watching her daughter grow into a global figure from afar. It wasn't just a letter. It was a confession, the kind of message that changes how you see everything. And the fact that it was hidden, locked away for decades, added another layer of mystery to an already complicated legacy. As Anne dug deeper, a worn manila envelope caught her eye. All disasters are not going to stop happening. So there will always be. It read, "Private, do not open." Inside were photographs, some joyful, others haunting. There was one that made Anne stop cold. It showed Diana at Clarence House just weeks before she left royal life for good. Her expression was distant. The photo felt heavy with emotion, but that wasn't all. Next to Diana, partially cropped out, was another woman, her arm visible, adorned with a very specific gold bracelet, one that Camilla had worn for years. Anne's breath caught. Why was Camilla in the photo? What was she doing there? Had they met privately? George noticed her reaction. Why would Queen Camilla keep this? He asked quietly. Anne didn't answer. She didn't have one. This photo wasn't part of any public archive. It wasn't framed or discussed. It was kept quiet, out of sight, like the rest of the trunk's contents. And it's a huge advantage if you have somebody who can be recognized as that, and not just in your country. It wasn't just the discovery of the photo. It was the implication, the secrecy, the timing. It reopened questions many thought had been buried long ago. Questions about relationships, boundaries, and what really happened behind closed palace doors. This wasn't history repeating itself. It was history refusing to stay silent. Later that day, word reached King Charles. Princess Anne had already spoken to him privately. Reports suggest the conversation was calm but serious. Camilla, upon returning, was quietly summoned. She admitted to keeping the letters, the journals, and the photograph, but her explanation surprised even Anne. "I didn't take them to hurt anyone," Camilla reportedly said. "I kept them because I needed to understand her. I wanted peace." Anne wasn't entirely convinced. Peace or not, why weren't these items stored properly? Why hide them, made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia? Prince William was furious. He demanded the chest be returned to Diana's estate immediately. The items were too personal, too sacred to be held privately. Harry, informed from afar, said nothing publicly, but according to those close to him, the silence spoke louder than words. The press, as expected, caught wind of the story. Headlines exploded. Diana's lost letters found, secrets hidden in Queen Camilla's room. Opinions poured in. Some defended Camilla's motives. Others saw it as another betrayal. The palace didn't issue an official statement, but behind the scenes, the shock waves were real. Anne, determined that the past shouldn't stay buried again, quietly proposed something bold. The world, she believed, deserved to hear Diana's voice once more. Plans began forming behind closed doors. It came about from a desire to see more change. And with William's approval, select pieces of Diana's writings might one day be released, not for scandal, but for truth. Anne believed this wasn't just about family. It was about legacy and about learning. For George, witnessing this firsthand was transformative. It gave him more than royal history. It gave him emotional truth. The contents of the chest weren't just artifacts. They were living reminders of how one woman's story still matters. The emotions Diana poured onto those pages, the glimpses of love, doubt, and strength, they weren't relics of the past. They were lessons for the future. This wasn't about pointing fingers. It was about making sure that memories were honored, not hidden. Camilla's role in it all remained complicated. But in the end, it wasn't about her. It was about what Diana left behind and who gets to remember it. And so, through a chest long forgotten, the legacy of a mother, a princess, and a human being found its way back to the light. Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you want more untold stories from behind the palace gates, don't forget to subscribe.